So we're talking about Jacques Cartier, the French explorer to the New World. Remember his name. It's pretty important, especially if you're Canadian, because he's basically the beginning of the French-Canadian history. And we know that whole parts of Canada are now French-speaking. What about Quebec? You know? And we know how the French Canadians and the English Canadians clashed many times. Still the clashing of empires. Let's go back to Jacques Cartier. So here Jacques comes, and he's sailing up this land called Canada, not knowing what it is. Then he's thinking, this land is a new world, and look at these people. They're very unusual people that live here. And he ran into first the Indians, Native Americans called the Micmacs. He made friends with them. He knew that he had to make friends with them because he knew there's lots of them and that they could at any time take his little party over. At least he thought. Although he wasn't really that fearful of a man, as we'll find out. So these Micmacs lived in these wigwams, and they too moved all over the place. When it got cold, they moved into the warmer climates, and when the warmer climates came, they moved up, and they followed the weather. That's how they lived. Kind of like, the explorers were living then. And as they made friends with this, that they asked, you guys, they tried to find out their language, not knowing their language for sure, trying to communicate, like, what is this, like showing them different things. They said, what is this? This whole here, this land, what is it? What do you call it? What do you call it? Land, this, where you're living. Of course, they were speaking French, and to the Micmacs, it's like they had no idea what they were talking about. But anyway, the Micmacs kept saying, oh, Canada, Canada, Canada. And so they're like, Canada, it's Canada. We'll name it Canada. The Micmacs were not saying the land was Canada. They were saying their village, they called the village, the name of the village, their village, traveling village the name village was called Canada. But let alone the name Canada stuck, as Jacques brought it back and said, Canada, they call it Canada. So it's still called Canada, isn't it? So here we have, Cartier making friends with the Micmacs, and then they met another tribe, the Hurons, and a chief named Donnacona. Donnacona, yeah. He was a different guy. He was like really curious of this white guy. He hadn't seen very many, probably any, white people before, especially speaking and as brave and adventurous as Jacques Cartier was and his party. Well, he started becoming friends to find out more about him. And he had two sons. Donnacona has two sons. And they became friends too, kind of family matter. And so it's starting to get cold, and so Jacques thinking, we better get out of here. We're going to go back to France. We want to take you back to France with us. And the chief's like, no, we don't know where you came from. Can imagine back there, we have no idea. Outer space, or where did you come from? Out there or somewhere, I'm sure he was like, but his two sons like, we want to go. Now they were probably, teenagers maybe. And for some reason, Donnacona, let them go with him, with Jacques. So he takes them back, and they went to France for 1 year. Of course, the chief is thinking, man, my sons will never come back. Probably getting a little bit heartsick that he let them go. 1 year passed, and guess what? There comes the ship, and there is Jacques, and there are his two sons. They're looking taller than ever. They're looking stronger than ever, and they are so excited to tell of all the wonderful things they saw in this new land to them. And so Donnacona says basically, okay, come on, I'll show you around. So he takes Jacques Cartier and and they sail more on this river, and as they're going in this river, Cartier stops, and Cartier says, I need to put the French flag up here. And, yes, the chief, really, thinking, what is he doing? So he stops, and he does this ceremony, and he says, I claim this land for France. This is New France. Chief didn't like this very much at all. I'm chief here. This is not your land. Go back from where you came from. So the Huron chief became nervous and very upset about this whole thing. And so he hired some of his medicine men, three of the medicine men, and said, you know what? You need to do some of your medicine and get rid of these guys. Send them back. Get them. So they're so scared they want to go home. And so the medicine man dressed up the scariest costumes they could do. And they tried to at night come and scare the French away. Do you think that the French men got scared? No. They were looking for some other things that were more important than being scared of a few medicine men. Didn't face Cartier at all. Jacques, he went on his way. As he went on his way, he saw, as the river went, he saw like sparkles in the rivers. And but the rivers were getting smaller and smaller. So he thought, I don't think this is going to be our passageway to China. It looks like the river is going to end pretty soon. There were rapids and such. But he looked and he thought, I think there's jewels. Let's take some of these rocks back. They're full of jewels. And so he collected these rocks to take back and thought, the king's going to be this is going to be cool. We got a bunch of jewels to bring him. He's going to be so happy with me. And so he got the jewels to bring back, but then he decided, I don't know where, there might be other riches here or something. I'm going to do something. And Jacques, he kidnapped the chief. Danakoda, I should say. He kidnapped him and brought him back to France. They brought him back to France, and yes, they were interested in the chief. In fact, the chief ended up dying in France, which is really a sad story. But they were interested at first in those little shiny things, those shiny rocks. And then they found that the rocks, they were quartz. They weren't diamonds. They weren't jewels. And they all laughed at Jacques Cartier. And Jacques Cartier was so embarrassed. He had gone back. But then when he came back, he was so discouraged that the French weren't supporting him. The French king wasn't supporting him after his laughing matter with the rocks, that he never did. Jacques Cartier never did go back. But other people did. In fact, soon others followed. The French became totally engulfed in this area. Not for gold, not for jewels and diamonds, not even for fish, not for lumber, not to colonize, not to settle. Fur. English women loved to wear their fur coats and their fur hats. And so did French women, and so did Spanish women. And those furs were warm in the winter time. The French became very interested in New France for furs. Can you believe that? So in 1605, Port Royal in Nova Scotia was founded, and so was Quebec in 1608. It was the first settlement in New France. Again, it wasn't a very good permanent settlement at all, because it was mainly full of French guys, French explorers, and they're all interested in trapping animals for their furs and to trade with the Indians. So this land became different, not seeking gold, but France was going to become one of the wealthiest nations too because of its fur trapping. So they formed a company, this time the Company of New France in 1627, and they had the rights for the fur trading. And the king said, you can go be fur traders, but First, yes, you're going to have to give back some to us, to the king, some of the wealth you get. Number two, you could only trap furs if you promise each year to bring 200 to 300 settlers. We need to colonize. We need some women. We need some children. We need some town. The town needs to grow with French people. So they had to find 200 to 300 people a year to bring over there for New France. It's kind of a hard thing because the French lady's like, oh, we don't go over there. I heard there's medicine men, scary dudes. It's really cold over there. It's really harsh. And we don't know anything about it. It's not a place to raise families. Well, they gradually tried, and they were trying, and some of the women that went over because they were in poverty and had nowhere else to go. New France. But we know. And a lot of the French men, instead of taking women from their wives and women from France, guess who they married? Native American women. So we have a whole pile Native Americans, half French and half Indian. We'll go on later.